Hey everybody, it's Mike. Welcome back to the Z Motorsports shop and channel. Today's project, we are going to be fabricating a new bumper and swing-away tire carrier for my cousin's 97 Wrangler TJ. Now, this has just got the factory bumper on it, spare tires hung on the tailgate, like they roll off the factory floor, or off the showroom floor. He asked me about a year and a half ago, back in 2016, if I would build him a bumper and carrier like I did on my 2011 JK. And at the time, wife and I was right in the middle of looking for a house, and then all last year we was in the middle of building a shop and yard and all that good stuff. So it's kind of funny because every time he comes over, he'll walk to my whiteboard and kind of see where his bumper is at in sequence on the whiteboard. So we're finally getting around to it. I've been looking forward to doing this for a while, so we are going to get started on it. It's not going to be anything really high-tech. It's going to be similar to the one I built on my JK, with the exception is it's not going to have the drop down in it because he's only running, I think these are 32s. Yeah, these are only 32 1150s, so it'll be a straight across bumper on the top. Gonna do mid-width, which is gonna stick out. This one here sticks out about 1.5 inches past the body, and we're gonna stick pretty close to that. The only difference is like I say, we're gonna run the top flat across. The bottom we'll leave about the same, so it comes down by down right above the OEM hitch, and then it'll taper up slightly, and I mean slightly. This measures about 5.5, 5 3/4 right through there. I think we're going to come up to somewhere around 3. So it'll go from 5 in the middle up to 3 on the outside corners. And then on the tire carrier, I'm going to just do this, plant the spindle down in, tie it into the frame, and run across. No provisions for any rotopacks or high lift jack or anything like that. It's just going to be a standard tire carrier. But he does want the tire moved up about 2 inches. He's got a little utility trailer that he hauls, and right now he says it's really the clamp on the coupler. He has to finesse it around to get it around the tire. So he wants me to raise the tire just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and take some measurements where the tire is sitting in relation to the bumper, and probably in relation to the tailgate. So I'm gonna go ahead and take some measurements, draw out some measurements real quick, and then I'm gonna start by disassembling things so that I can kind of start looking at it, getting some measurements, getting a visual, and then I'll move on to my CAD design. Well, I finally got the bumper off. Some of these bolts were a little corroded in there. So I've been sitting here staring at this, and I think I've got a game plan here. This back cross member, although it's quite heavy, it's probably 10 gauge, 12 gauge maybe, probably 10 gauge. You know, a lot of the aftermarket bumpers, bolt into here, which is fine for majority of the duties that the bumper is going to perform. However, seeing as how that is kind of, I don't know, a little lighter than I like for pulling in tension, I think, and he's already got a hitch under here that goes up under and tied into the frame. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut just below the radius here, so it leaves the strength in from that radius where this body mount is. Plus also it'll look better from the top side, but I'll cut just below that, come over and cut right in line with where this hitch bolts up to the frame. Then I'm going to eliminate these 2 bolts. They have them going from the inside of the frame out on one of those wire pieces that you snake through. So basically it'd be pulling on 1/2 of the box of the frame. I think what I'm going to do is cut those off, because I tried turning them and they're rusted solid. There's no anti-seize or anything put on these. Again, the vehicle's, what is it? 20 some odd years old, being a 97, 21 years old. So I think I'm going to cut these off, leave this front one bolted through, pivot that frame, pivot the hitch down, accessing these 2 holes, And then I'm going to drill out those holes larger, and I'm going to machine a sleeve that I can put in there and weld the sleeve in. Then put through bolts, so I'm grabbing the entire box of the frame, both sides, with those sleeves welded in, and I can get up inside here on this side of the gas tank and on this side of the gas tank and put nice washers and nuts on and pull all the way through that, and it'll pull right in line with the hitch here. So I think that's probably going to be the strongest option here. And then once I get that done, I can run the plate right through where I'm cutting here, and you know what I may even do for appearance reasons is I may just cut a U up in there, leave all this connected, and just cut a U up into there where the bumper will literally just slide in there and then bolt in this way. So when I go to remove it after fabricating, I just take those bolts out, pull it straight out, send it off to a powder coater, and then reverse coming back in. Hey, maybe that's what I'll do, is I'll just cut a U so that plate will sit right in there. And that way I don't lose any of the strength out here where this body mount is. Cut these bolts off, machine some through spacers, get the plates mounted on here, and then start building the bumper. And then right here is also where I'm going to put my recovery, my D-ring mounts, my recovery points, so they're pulling right in line with the frame. So we're going to go ahead and get the, probably just get the plasma cutter out. I don't use the plasma cutter a lot, so I think I'll just mark it here and get the plasma cutter out, cut these, and cut these 2 bolts off on this side, 2 bolts off on the other side. I have it protected along the quarters, and then I just threw my one of my welding blankets just over the tire to keep anything off the wheel and the tire. So I'm going to go ahead and come in here and cut this and knock these bolts off on each side. More of a close-up where you can see where I knocked the heads off. This one here, I just got a little burr right there I'll knock off, and then knock it inside. That one there just come out. And here's where the plate will go in from the side. Probably go in about to just past those. This area is all cleaned up and prepped, and I've measured it. I've got some 3-inch wide strap. Those holes center to center about 1.5 inch apart. So I've got some 3-inch, 1/4 inch wall strap. So I'm going to go cut a couple pieces about 8-inch long each, 2 of them. That'll be the pieces coming out, and then that's where I'll start mocking the bumper up from there. So I'm gonna go over to the horizontal bandsaw and cut 2 pieces of 3-inch strap, 8 inches long. Have the mounting plates mocked into place. They're leveled and trued up with the rest of the vehicle. So I've got them clamped in there. I've just got them loosely fastened for right now. I laid, usually I box these. I'll start with just flat strap. However, I run across a piece of 5-inch by 2-inch channel that I had in my scrap pile that is, I believe 50, it was about 50 inches. So it'll come past my points where I'm going to attach the bumper and my recovery points. So I think I'm going to use that, and then I'll just build the corner pieces coming off of that, which will only come out maybe, 6 inch, about 6 inches is all on each side, and then just support them from the inside. So that'll save me a lot of work on this front fascia piece here. Now, the hitch on this has a slight rise, and so I'm going to notch the bottom part of the seat, the channel. I'm going to notch it so it slides in over that. But then also while I'm cutting, I like to line up. I always put my recovery points right in line with the frame where I'm going to be pulling. So what I'm going to do is on this 5-inch section, I'm going to cut probably this. I think this measures 1 inch wide. Yeah, that's 1 inch. So I'll probably cut at least a 5/8, 3/4 inch wide by probably 2 inch. This is 2.5. So I'll probably go 1 3/4 inch by probably 5/8, 3/4 of an inch hole. And that way, when I put this on, I'm going to weld it from the back side So I've got full penetration into my D-ring. Then just breathe over it because it'll be recessed in, kind of like a large rosette or a plug weld. Then put the piece up in here and weld the bracket to the bumper. Then then on the outside, I'll go ahead and cap it with another weld. That way I know 100% that this is secured around the perimeter, also inside, and it'll be pulling right directly in line with that frame cross member. So I'm going to go ahead over to the fabrication table now. I've got all my lines laid out. I'm going to go over and cut the holes so I can weld this on. Here you can see where I've cut the holes. This is for the hitch to recess around. And then I've cut the opening in the back side here. And I have the D-rings tacked in place. So I'm going to go over and mock it up one last time. Then I'll come back over, burn these in good, knock it down, and then that's right where the bracket, mounting bracket will also attach. So I'm going to go over and mock this up one last time, make sure everything lines properly and looks decent. Okay, so I just got a couple of 1/2-inch pieces of plate sitting here where it'll space this up off of the hitch 1/2 inch. And bump it in. And I'm 1 15/16 each side off of that plate. Bingo, right on the money. So that's where it's going to sit. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. This top gap will have a 1-inch strip filled in, which will slightly overlap that cross member. That'll look freaking awesome right there. Okay. Then I just got to build the corner pieces out, and then I'll plate them into the back side for strength and call it good. I think the top one I'll come out, bottom one from here I'll kind of taper up, and then fill the other piece in and around the corner. So I'm going to go back over to the fabrication table and weld the back side of these D-rings, and then put it back up in place and tack the brackets, and then pull it and go over and burn them in good. So there's everything burned in good. I've got the brackets welded on. I've got the D-rings. I welded them from the back side, then welded the mounting bracket on, and then welded them from the outside. So if anything needs to be pulled on from those recovery points, it's going to be pulling directly on the frame. So I think I'm going to weld this filler panel in next, this 1-inch filler panel, which will be slightly above and just barely over the cross member. And then from there I'll start, I think I got to come out probably about 6 inches and build the end caps. So I'll come straight out here and then taper this one up a little bit. But that's basically it. And then I'll have to cut a hole over here for the trailer hitch. He wants it in the face rather than below. So I'll have to drill that in and wrap this thing up. So let's go over to the welding bench and add this filler piece on. So I just finished up adding this 1-inch filler panel along there. So now I'll come in and I put a slight bevel on each piece and then filled it. I went ahead and TIG welded that just to keep the weld profile down. So I should be able to just breathe across this with a grinder and a blending disc and blend that in. And I'll go ahead and bolt it up and start building the outer ears. Just kind of a close-up of the welds. Like I said, I just bounced around all up and down it. And then I've got a few welds on the back side, about every 6 inches on the back side as well. There it is, bolted up in place. So the top filler panel is just barely over the edge of the cross member. I'm centered here and here. I'm halfway over the holes for the safety chains. 2 inches from the end of the receiver. And it's pretty, it is dead level all the way across in relation to the bottom of the body. So now I'm going to start putting the ears on. So I'll go to some cardboard and make some templates and then start cutting them out. I have the top piece on, the bottom piece on, tacked in place. I'm evenly spaced for 3 inches. So next up is I'll take a piece of cardboard and trim this piece, and this piece. So I need 3 more pieces on each side. And then I can pull the bumper and finish weld all this and metal finish it. So here's where I've landed so far. I've got my top cardboard template, my bottom cardboard template, rear filler, rear outer, and outer outer. So got all those filled in. I just need to breathe over these couple welds and knock them down. This one here, I'll run down smooth. I've burned them in pretty good. The other ones, I should just be able to lightly roll them and blend them. This top one right here, I left a little bit of a gap in the metal so that it would be back a little bit, and then I kind of walked in a C pattern and patted this one a little bit. My thinking was I'm trying to mirror this radius. This radius here is what I'm trying to match so it'll flow out to that outer edge. The other ones aren't going to be quite as noticeable, but this is the one I wanted to really kind of mirror. So the other ones I should just be able to breathe across them and knock them down, metal finish them. Then once I get that done, I'll have to see where either one side or the other of the frame mount. The frame mount is right here, right about the middle, just offset of the middle of that D-ring. So I'll have to decide whether I want to plant my tire carrier hinge there on the outside or the inside of that bracket, give it plenty of meat to tie into, and still clear this hinge here. So I'd like to stay to the inside, but I got a funny feeling I'm going to have to go to the outside to clear that. So we'll see where that lands us and go from there. But for right now, I just need to knock these couple welds out. I'll probably pull it off and bring it over to the bench to do that. I have my spindle placement located, and what you want to do is you want to make sure, because this is going to be up just a little bit, so you want to make sure that it is not in direct line with the see them ninja quick reflexes? You want to make sure that it is not in line or under the pivot point for the tailgate. So this way, when the tailgate swings open, the tailgate will stop and be placed inboard of where the spindle is going to be located. If you put the spindle over here, say directly under, or even worst case, too far inboard, even with it just placed up a little bit, right there it might clear over the top, but it's going to come in contact with the carrier before the tailgate's fully open. So I want the tailgate to go against its natural stops prior to coming in contact. So the carrier will be spaced out here a little bit, tailgate will stop just shy of it and allow for a little bit of spring back, because there is some flex when you open those. So that being said, I've got a plate that I put over the opening for the spindle, and I do this for 2 reasons. First of all is because it's going to add a little bit of strength, because this is where I also connected my ears on. So by putting a plate over that and having the hole for the spindle go through the plate, probably quarter, I usually don't go 5/16, I'm usually 1/4 inch. So by having it go through that plate, and as well as the 1/8 inch for the bumper, it's going to add some rigidity to it. It's also going to space it up, and then I'm going to be able to weld the spindle on the back side and tie it directly to the frame mounts. Usually I'll take a piece of plate and come off the spindle and go directly to that plate, and then also usually tie it into here. So I try to tie it at least 2, sometimes 3 points. So I'm going to try to tie it to the back here, to this side over here, and then also to the bracket. So that spindle will be very well rigid. Mine on my Jeep has been on there 80,000 miles driving, and probably another 30,000 being towed or trailered. Well, probably 30,000 flat towed, another, it's still bouncing around in the trailer. But I mean, there's no cracking, no nothing. I'm not gentle with it. When I open it up, it usually will go out against the stop. So the other reason why I put a plate here is because I put a hole in there, 1/2 inch hole, maybe a little bit bigger. I should probably go, I think I go like 17/32. So I go a little bit larger than half to allow this push pin to drop into. Now, when that spindle's in location, the push pin will basically be to the rear of it, and I stand it off. I'll usually take a little piece of like 1/2 inch or 3/8 inch plate and stand it off 3/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch. And then as that, so in the closed position, this push pin will be out about right here. As now on thicker bumpers, like on my JK bumper, where my bumper's thicker, it's still going to be over the bumper. But like on my son's LJ when we did it, and this TJ, the bumpers are so narrow, and to try to keep everything tucked in, this push pin usually will overhang the bumper a little bit out here. Then when you open the gate, this push pin swings over and will allow it to drop into that hole and lock it in the open position. Some people don't put those. Some people will put a mechanical hard stop. Some people don't put stops. I've seen them wrap around and contact the fender or something. And I like a positive stop. So this isn't necessary, but I like them because just for that reason. I've got it in a habit now. When I pop mine open, first thing I do is reach over. These push pins I've been using are they lock in the up position, quarter turn. You turn them 90 degrees, they drop down, protrude through. So I usually have it in the up position when I'm swinging my carrier open and closed. As soon as I pop it open and get ready to start opening it, I'll reach over and pop that the quarter turn, and as soon as it finds the hole, it snaps into place and it's there. So now another thing with this is you're going to want to, unless you space it clear out here where you're going to have full, what is that? I don't like spacing them out too far, but if you was to space this out, you'd have to space this out 1.25 inches in order, about 1 1/8 inches, because this is a 2.25 inch diameter pull knob, so you'd have to come out 1 1/8 inches in order to clear that. But I don't come out that far. I only come out usually about 1/2 inch, 3/8 of an inch. So you're going to want to weld this thimble. This thimble unscrews to reveal this. You're going to want to weld this thimble on in a manner that when this is tight, the push pin or the T-handle is spaced away from this side of the tube. Then as you pull this up and turn it, it comes close to this side. So that allows that to turn without coming into contact. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to drop it. If you just willy-nilly welded this on without paying attention, more than likely it would lock. It would be in a position where that's where it would be tight and you couldn't hit that point. So you want to pay close attention to the orientation of this and weld it in a manner that will allow that handle to turn one way or another 90 degrees without coming in contact with your spindle tube. So with that being said, now I think I'm going to go ahead and remove this, bring it over, and this stuff I can do actually on the welding bench. So I will cut the plate, cut the hole, get it all tacked in place, put the spindle and everything in, get everything tacked, and then come over and test fit, and then I'll weld this on probably right here, and then bring it back to the fabrication table and do all the final welding on it. I used some 2-inch square tubing, thinner wall. It's not quarter. I think it's thicker. I think it's 188. I think it's 3/16 wall that I'll run across. And then I'll put a 90 degree on the other side over there with the clasp, the hatch, or excuse me, the latch for the to lock the tailgate, the carrier to the bumper. So I've placed this spindle down here along with my cover plate, determined a height that will allow the sleeve to sit right down on about 1/8 of an inch up off of the surface. So the seal will seal down on that machine surface. And it will also allow this pin to fully engage into this plate. So once I got that done, I measured how far I needed to cut it, which is what I've done here. And then come up off the end, cut it, but I measured this angle of this bottom plate so that when I put that down in there to weld it, it actually is going to fully sit flat on this bottom plate, and I can weld it at least probably maybe 200 degrees around that plate on the bottom when it sits there level. So gone ahead and measured everything. So I've got the spindle leveled up. Now I'm also going to go one step further and measure off of this plate. It looks like 2 1/8. So I will cut a piece of 2 1/8 inch plate to tie into this piece, come over and stabilize this. So basically it'll be welded underneath here, welded down here, welded to a plate here, and welded a little bit along the top. I'll probably TIG weld along the top so I can keep the, I'll probably TIG weld around the top surface to keep the weld profile just a little smaller, but it'll be welded along the top side here, bottom, and then I'll put that plate in. So that's not going anywhere at all. So I'm gonna go ahead and go cut a piece and get this prepped while I can get a grinder in. Actually, I've already knocked the mill scale off of that, so then I just have to knock the mill scale off of the side here. And so I'll go knock the mill scale off this and cut a piece real quick. I have the top plate welded on. I've got my hole drilled for my push pin. I went ahead and welded the spindle as well, so it's welded underneath the bumper, on top of the top plate, down to the bottom of the bumper, and tied in with the bracket there. So as soon as that cools, we'll go ahead and put our sleeve on. I've got the bearings pressed, the races pressed in. And then we'll figure out where we're going to put this top bar, get the latch mechanism and the stop fabricated and welded on. And then at that point, we can start building the carrier. But that right there, just let that cool for a minute. So let's see if I can zoom in on those welds. Welds actually turned out pretty decent. Hopefully those are showing up. All right, let's get this mocked back into position. So, got the pivot piece here on, so when it opens, it locks in. So this is where the tailgate opens to 210 degrees. I went 215 on this, so we'll open the tailgate and then put this 2-inch square tube on, and I'll fish mouth it so it'll fit on nice and neat. And it'll come out just past the tailgate. Then once I get that tacked in place, we'll close it and then close the gate and see where it lands over here and put our latch and everything on. And then our bottom bar for the carrier is actually installed. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend up a piece, probably 2.5 by 2, 2.5 by 2 by probably 2.5 inches tall L bracket right here, and that'll be the cradle for the carrier to come into. And then the latch will bolt to the front of that 2-inch tube and latch along the side, like so. So I have my backing plate in there. I need to determine the back spacing for this top bracket. So for that, I'm just going to use a simple straight edge. And off of that, that's 4 1/8. It's actually about, not quite 4 1/4. Let's go, let's call it 4 1/8. That'll pull the tire in just a little bit to it. So if we're going to have a piece of 2-inch square tube coming up from this, we're going to add 2 inches to that so it comes out flush. So basically we're going to come out to 6 1/8 with the overall length of this tube, and then we'll mate the other one up to it, and then 2 angle pieces coming off. So I'm going to cut a piece that's 6 1/8 and then cap the one end. Have my 6 1/8 inch piece cut. This will be the standoff. I went ahead and cut me a 1 3/4 by 1 3/4 block off plate. So I'll go ahead and weld that on to cap that off. Then I calculated the height of measured the height of the tire to the center. The owner wants his tire 2 inches higher than what it was before. So off the top of that carrier to where the tire was placed before was 13 inches to the center. So if I add 2 inches to that, it's going to be 15 inches. But seeing as how I'm using a 2 inch diameter piece of square tubing, half of that to put in the middle will be 14. So I went ahead and while I had the bandsaw going, I cut a tube at 14 inches. So basically this will sit like that and space that tire up the proper distance. And then once I get that welded, I will span and come off probably about halfway up this tube, enough to span that and come down probably a couple 45-degree gussets, and the carrier's done other than doing the latch. So I'm going to go ahead, before it's too far away, I'm going to go ahead and TIG this plate on the top. Then I'll go ahead and weld it onto here, then here, and then I'll bring the carrier over here and lay it on the bench and clamp it down and weld it here on the table. So there's the upright, and it's 15 inches to dead center, which is the OEM one was 13 inches up from dead center. He wanted it 2 inches higher. Can't get any better than that. So actually I might be 1/16 of an inch off. So I gave him a 1/16. Anyway, I'm going to go over and determine placement for the center of this. Then we'll go ahead and weld it on, and then come off of each side with 2 laterals or 2 diagonals coming down off the sides. And the tire carrier is pretty much done. See if I can get a close up here. You can see how I capped the back side, and then I just put a slight chamfer on it, and got all that welded on. Hopefully those welds show up. So, okay, we'll go over to the Jeep now and determine center. So I've got the vertical piece welded on. Now I'm going to come off here with I'm going to come out about 12 inches from each side of this and up to here. So I need a couple pieces about, 19 inches long, roughly, 19, 20 inches long, and come off of there. And then I just need to mount my latch. Now, the latch, I'm not really fond, or not really thrilled the way this latch fits. It actually has to overhang slightly in order to get a straight pull on the clasp. So, and I've had to do this on a couple other these carriers. I'll just take and trim back. Now it ends up looking like about 3/8 of an inch. I'll end up trimming back and trimming these outer holes off, drill 2 additional holes, and that will allow that to overhang slightly and still look decent. So I'll just trim that back, drill 2 more holes, drill and tap the 4 holes into this piece, and the 2 angles. Then the carrier part's done, and then I just have to cut a hole in the bumper for he wants the trailer receptacle flush mounted back into the bumper itself. So I need to determine the location for that. So I'm going to go ahead and do this first, I think, this latch, and then I'll do the All right, so I've got 2 holes done. I'm gonna go ahead and transfer punch. Two holes. All right. Okay, so while the carrier itself is cooling off from welding, I went ahead and drilled a 1/4-inch hole through here where I'm gonna put the trailer plug, and I centered it. My marks here indicate that the cross member is a 1/2 inch below the surface here. The cross member is 3 inches wide. So I measured down, I found the center, which should be the center of that cross member. So I drilled a 1/4-inch hole here, and then I used a transfer punch, went in, center punch the cross member. So I'll drill a 2-inch hole here, and I think probably 1.5 inch in the cross member to be able to, for the receptacle, for the plug to fit all the way through. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull it off now and bring it over to the table, drill these 2 holes. All right, tapping the, got the hole cut, number 21 drill bit, and I am tapping for 1032 for the trailer plug, and then we'll do a one last mock up and bolt everything up in place, see how everything goes together. All right, she's officially done. There it is, open. Release the pin, pull it closed. And she's locked. Got the hole cut and everything drilled and tapped for 1032 screws for the trailer plug. So she's ready to break apart and send off to powder coating. Turned out pretty decent, I think. Well, I've picked her up from the powder coater today. So let's open this bad boy up and see how it looks. All right, nice looking finish. Welds even showed through the powder coating in a lot of the areas, so awesome. Oh yeah, defined ripples on the welds shown through. That looks pretty damn good. Just got to chase some holes here for the plug and get ready to. Oh, I'm going to drill and tap a couple of holes for some UHMW for the slide here. And it's ready to install this piece and then move on to the carrier. I'm right here in the unwrapping mode. I may as well unwrap the carrier. And the one thing they didn't, this is what I was worried about. The one thing they didn't tape off was where the braces go and the push pin. So I'll have to get after that, but and you see right here I've got to get in, and I'll have to get in with an emery roll knock the powder coating off where the races go, as well as where the push pin threads in. But they did the spindle and the studs like I asked them to. So, oh well, could be worse. I mean, I'm sure they just either got carried away or forgot or something. So I'll get in there and clean those up before final assembly. So I have a piece of UHMW here that I've cut and put a chamfer on so that as it sits in here and the carrier closes, it'll probably hit just below the height, the top of this, and kind of slide up on. So I'm going to take and drill and counterbore 2 holes here, drill and tap, probably I think I've got some 1/4 button head screws. Before I do that, I wanted to kind of show that I just cut this on the bands. It's just 5/8 inch thick. I had about a square foot of it. I cut off a piece, and then I put it over in the disc sander just to clean up the edges. Now, whenever you cut and sand on these, you get these little, I don't know what you'd call them, these little things on the edge, these little burrs. But if you take just a standard razor blade and drag it backwards against where you just ground, it'll take everything off nice and clean and leave a radiused, kind of see how just leaves a nice radiused edge. Did this for years when I was building Banshees and quad racers for the sand dunes. We were trimming the plastic body panels and painting them and everything, and I'd cut them with just a jigsaw, fine-tooth jigsaw, and it'd always leave those little burrs. Then I'd just come back and drag a razor blade and work my way around to where on the edge of the fender it put a nice radius. The paint adhered to it well and easy cleanup, and it looked nice. It almost looked like it come from the factory that way. So there again, you just kind of drag, and I usually start just over from halfway, drag it one direction. And that way you're dragging it off the corner rather than trying to go from right on the corner out. So you can see how kind of nice and cleaned up that is. So now I've got to put a little bit more of a radius, and then I chamfered the back side a little bit so it'd sit down over the weld. So I just need to put a little bit more of a radius in this back corner here, and that'll fit right in. And then like I said, then I'll just drill and tap 2 holes, counterbore into here, and that'll be done. I'll do this right now before I put the bumper on the Jeep. That way it's easier to drill and tap here. I didn't do it before just because I wasn't quite sure where I was gonna, put this and everything. So I figured just to drill and tap 2 holes would be no big deal to do it after it's powder coated. So I went ahead and put the bigger radius on that, drilled and counterbored for a couple of 1/4 button head stainless steel fasteners. So I'm going to set this into position and use transfer punch here to center punch my holes. Drill 2 holes, number 7s, I'm using 1/4. Okay, those 2 holes are tapped. Clean the all right, so now these can go into place. And that bolts right down there like it was meant to. Okay, perfect. Now it's ready to get some bolts and some nuts and bolt this onto the Jeep. All right, bumper's on, carrier's on, spindle's tightened, cutter key in it, cap on it. The push pin is on it. Boom. Now I put the spare tire on and it's done. So there's the tire mounted on it. Swings away nice, firm, very rigid. Clean installation. All right, so that concludes the bumper and tire carrier build for this 97 Wrangler, Jeep Wrangler TJ. So hope you enjoyed watching, and thank you very much. I welcome any comments, and if you like it, give me a thumbs up, and go out there in the shop and build your own bumper. It's pretty straightforward and should turn out just as good. Thanks for watching.